pastors, politicians, or news anchor in the room, it's going to be a fight for the microphone. And it may also be a very long day. My name is Stuart Moore. I am the oldest grandson. I'd like to make sure that you all know that. TJ, CJ, DJ, all the J's, DJs. The oldest grandson of my grandmother. I hesitated with getting up to speak today. Well, let me say I second guessed if I should actually speak today. But like most of my family, if there's a topic, we have something to say. We all called Bernice Jones, my grandmother, by a different name, as you just heard one of them. And it came natural to each of us and every one of us to come up with that name. For me and my sister Brandy, she was Grandma. And because Brandy is the oldest grandchild, everyone else got it wrong. She made the rules. I didn't make the rules. She made the rules. Even in my own house, we have different names for Grandmommy. My mom, Ivy, in this new hip age of grandmothers, goes by Gigi. There's a couple other Gigi's out here, too. I've heard of a couple people being screamed at called Gigi. Ronan, knowing Gigi, Ronan, my eldest son, knowing Gigi, with no prompt when he met Grandmommy, goes Gaga. As if that were an elevated version of Gigi, a more senior version of Gigi, recognized it immediately. But I digress. Grandmama was a woman who in her 87 years constructed a towering legacy. Imagine living for 87 years, having had 10 kids, too many grands and great-grands, never having to bury one. We can all but dream that one day our kids bury us. And she got to live that dream. I will share some moments that were between just us, some times where she offered me prayer and guidance. As we all know from the readings and just knowing her, she grew up in Alabama, lived in Kentucky for most of her life, not really leaving from her general circle. But that did not stop her from having advice that could be carried around the world. In 2001, I was glued to the TV like many of us, watching the impacts from 9/11 and the subsequent wars that happened. And I realized at that moment I was probably overwatching it, but that it was having an impact on me. And my mom, Gigi, mommy, however you call her, said, call my mom. She'll have something for you that you can take from her. And the Bible, as she told me, is full of war, but it's also full of hope and faith, and that the righteous always prevail. So I took that lesson, and I went on to college a year or two later. Then Katrina hit the Gulf Coast when I was in college, and I saw the people who escaped the storm's path directly, because I was in Tallahassee, who came to Tallahassee from New Orleans and Mississippi. Once again, I called Grandma. I called her a lot in college on Sundays. That was my day. I called Grandma. And I had two grandmothers at the time, so I called them both on Sundays. And they would give me different advice and different things and talk to me about how things were going. But once again, I was seeing that what happened from Katrina was taking a toll. And of course, she had a Bible verse to go along with the message that she gave. And I don't remember the one specifically that she told me on that day, but I will share one that I think represents what she says. And it's from Ephesians 2:10. And it says, "For we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Because it's the work of God that was helping the people who were suffering so much that we should pay attention to. Because that's God's forgiveness for the people who had been through so much. And it was strengthening if you were helping give back. It was those talks and words of wisdom that I will always remember, because she was calm and confident. The answers were there if you just slowed down and searched for God's message and listened to what he was telling you. I promise I'm going to wrap this up, but I need to remind everyone in the room a few quick things. Not only am I the tallest and best looking grandchild, I was also the favorite and the most humble. So it should come as no shock that for decades she would specially make biscuits for me. You hear some jeers over here because they're still a little salty. I'm going to get to it. I remember as a boy, Granddaddy and I would sit at the breakfast nook talking about weather, fishing, animals, hunting and hunting dogs, and of course syrup. Alaga syrup was the only one he would ever use, and I remember everyone else would be asleep in the house, but I couldn't sleep in because the sanctuary that Breezy was talking about was where I slept when I stayed at my mom's house. So I could smell the seeping of the biscuits going into that room. I'd come running. Grandma would be making them in 2 trays of biscuits, right? Two big trays of biscuits. One of them had all biscuits, regular size, and the other one had a giant biscuit on it with the other little regular size ones. And I remember as a child reaching for that big biscuit. That biscuit wasn't for me. That biscuit was for Granddaddy because she loved Granddaddy. In a way, we can all only dream to love someone. She was passionate about serving him, knowing his work was to serve the Lord and the family. After he went home to the Lord, she didn't make that much anymore. Not that she couldn't, but her main reason, because Granddaddy was gone, had gone to heaven. Still had the Alaga syrup in there. One day, I mentioned this before, her favorite grandson was back in town. And I leaned in on her and I asked her nicely if she could make her famous homemade biscuits. You may have seen that picture of me leaning in on one of the slideshows. She gave me that look like, boy. And I didn't say anything. I just kept looking at her. And I said, please, Grandmama. She made those pans of biscuits, 2 big pans, and 1 giant biscuit on there. And she said, you can finally have that one. I must have had 8 biscuits that day. And she said, if the others are asleep, then they'll just simply miss out. So I'm going to say this last part, and you're going to think I may be making it up, but I'm not. For 4 to 5 days a week, my boys who are sitting in the back watching monster trucks on iPads because they can't sit still, have biscuits. And 4 to 5 days a week, they eat their biscuits with syrup. And it makes me think of those mornings with Granddaddy and Grandmama in the breakfast nook, talking about weather.